So let us carry on with the Sabbasava Sutta on all the defilements. And just to kind of very briefly, we're going to come up to the third way of abandoning defilements. We have looked at the way which is through seeing, dasana in Pali. Then we had a quick look at the idea of restraint. We didn't spend much time on that, but that's okay because we will look more at some of those ideas later on. And now we're going to come to the third one, which is the defilements to be given up by using. But I thought it was quite interesting. One of the things I didn't comment on yesterday was the idea that these defilements are feverish and distressing. That was one of the words I think that was used there. Vigata parilaha, I think the Pali words are. And distressing and feverish. And it's kind of interesting, this idea that the defilements are feverish, distressing and feverish. They are distressing because it basically is a kind of displeasure when the mind is kind of moved around in the world through all the sense contacts and all the sense impressions. It's actually distressing. It is so opposite from how people normally view the world and view the sense contact. We think of it as something delightful, to be indulged in, to be something that is actually something we enjoy in our life. So this Buddhist idea goes so much against the stream of things. This is what we say, that when we practice the path, it goes against the stream because it goes against how we normally view the world. And the idea here is not to kind of say that, well, suddenly from day one to day one, the next day we kind of change our attitude. That's not the point. The point is that, again, this is for reflection. It is for insight. It's for actually trying to look at the world in a new way. This is the purpose of this. It's not kind of to reject sensual pleasures because they are just as they were before. You still have the same feeling about them, but it's kind of trying to see them in a new way and trying to find an alternative to this. This is the purpose of this. So are they really distressing? Is the Buddha, does he have a point? Or are they actually just to be enjoyed and to be, to have had a good time or whatever? This is the thing we need to investigate, to find out. But it is kind of fascinating how upside down things are in the Dhamma compared to how people view things in the ordinary world. How people generally view these things. It's kind of astonishing. And this gives you an idea of why to be a Buddha, why to be a noble person is such an astonishing achievement, and it's such an astonishing alternative, and why it is so hard to comprehend, because it literally is seeing the world upside down. Everything is kind of reversed from how we normally see things. So it's actually distressing. Things that we think are delightful, if you look at it from a higher perspective, and you have to have that higher perspective. If you are immersed in those defilements, you just can't see it. And you shouldn't even try. You shouldn't force yourself to see things that don't come naturally. It should be a natural insight that you get by looking at these things with a sense of wisdom and detachment. Then it is the right way of how to think about these things properly. And this is one of those great suttas. I can't remember what I have included in here anymore because it's a while ago since I put these suttas together. But there's this beautiful sutta. I think I can't remember where it is now even, somewhere in there. There's so many suttas. And where it says that what the noble ones take to be happiness, the world take to be suffering. And what the world takes to be happiness, the noble ones take to be, what the world takes to be suffering, the noble ones take to be happiness, and vice versa. So it really is upside down. And this is why, part of the Dhamma, it has to do with confidence. It has to do with a bit of faith. It has to seeing this at least a little bit. And then as you do that, you start to uncover this profound teaching and seeing things in a new way. So it's this distressing on the one hand, and it is feverish on the other hand. The idea of fever, a mind that is feverish, is a mind which is kind of agitated, always moving, always kind of, not being still. A fever is a very unpleasant state to be in. And this is exactly what these defilements are like. It's this agitated, restless mind, always moving from one thing to another one. And the other thing about a fever is that it is delusional. Yeah? When you have a fever, you don't see things clearly. You're kind of immersed in this world and you have delusions about things. And that is true what happens in the sensory world. We are deluded about where real happiness is to be found. Yeah? We cannot see things clearly. So it's distressing and feverish. It's actually, there's a lot of meaning sometimes in these little things. And easy to skip over it. It's worthwhile reflecting on them. This is why I say every word in the suttas is there for a purpose, and everything is interesting once you start to pull it apart and reflect on it in the right way. So there you are. That is the sensory restraint, why it makes sense to restrain ourselves a little bit, so we can reduce some of those fevers and distresses in life. So now let us go on to the idea of using, how to use requisites, really, the things that you own in life or the things that you have borrowed, however you want to look at it, it's temporary, you're just borrowing these things for a while, but these things that you have borrowed, or these things that we use, our requisites, how do we use them in a good way? This is what this next one is about, how to avoid defilements by using. So, the third type of abandoning of defilements. So the Buddha says, what are the defilements that should be given up by using here? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, makes use of robes, only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, and for covering up the private parts. So, so again, he starts off with the idea of reflecting properly. Everything here is about yoniso manasikara, wise attention, wise reflection. That's why the kind of the whole retreat, I kind of named it the theme as wise reflection, because this is what the sutta really is about. So you reflect wisely about how to make use of your robes, or if you are a layperson, your clothes. So it's the same kind of idea, how to use these kind of things. And the idea here is that they have a specific purpose, and you try to restrict it to that purpose. It is to kind of safeguard you against the cold, and some people have been concerned that I might be too cold, but you don't have to be concerned about that. I'm okay. I'm warding off sufficient cold to be okay here. So warding off the cold and heat, warding off the flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles. Basically anything for which the clothes are used, and for covering up the private parts, for having a sense of modesty here. So this is what it is used for, and it is not used for all kind of other stuff. So many people in the world, it's very common to use clothes as a status symbol, or you kind of into certain fashions, or you want to say something about your identity through your clothes. You wear weird clothes, or whatever it is. We say a lot about who we think we are through what we wear. It's like we extend our personality into our clothes. This is so common, This is what almost everyone does, because we kind of, this is me, and this is my clothes, and my personality is such, and I show that through what I wear. And this is one of the great things about coming here on a retreat, You don't worry about those things anymore. You just wear something which is comfortable, something which is loose, something which is not fancy. We don't wear clothes specifically. The precepts say we don't wear things for adornment or for looking fancy or anything like that. You just wear it for, for this kind of purpose. And there's something marvelous about that, because when we wear things to kind of extend our ego into the world, to manifest our identity, you become a bit self-conscious about it. You become like, this is me, and you're kind of wondering whether people are looking at you in the right way, or that sort of thing. But when you wear things that have none of those markers, it's like your self-consciousness, your sense of identity starts to fade, a little bit. And that's kind of a very nice thing to do when you are on retreat, because when we have a sense of identity and we go on retreat, well, that creates, makes it more difficult to let go. It makes it more difficult just to be here, because we're trying to be something here rather than just being here. It blocks our ability to just be here. So this is kind of the idea. We're not wearing any kind of fancy things, or not wearing any kind of makeup or adornments or anything like that. Is that you can just be without being somebody in particular. And that being somebody is always in relation to other people. Yeah, it always creates that sense of, what are people think about me and this kind of thing. Yeah. Let go of all of that, and it's so nice. And then you can just flow through the retreat without worrying about other people, and just enjoy the retreat far more. So this is like a very practical way of starting to reduce the sense of self and the sense of ego. You do it in this particular way. And as monastics, we try to wear kind of simple stuff, but even sometimes among monastics, you'd be surprised. Sometimes there are fashions among monastics. Yeah. There are certain ways of, you have to sew the robe in a certain way. Well, let's have a look at, well, you haven't sewed your robe in the latest fashion. You better kind of get your act together. Or you have certain types of cloth, that are kind of highly prized among monastics. There's certain monasteries in Thailand. I don't know so much what's happening. Probably the same thing in Sri Lanka and Burma. I know a little bit more about Thailand because we have a little bit more connection with the monastic tradition there in this particular sense anyway. There are certain monasteries that are famous for sewing the best robes. Have you got a robe from that monastery? Okay, then they have like kind of I don't know how that works. They almost like they have a robe shop or something in those monasteries, and they kind of sell robes or something. And then you have the different sects. One of the things about Buddhism is that we are divided into so many different kind of sects. You may not even be aware of this. Obviously, there are the big kind of sects. You have Mahayana, you have Theravada, you have Vajrayana. But within Theravada, there's a large number of different kind of groups split up from each other. And Burma is famous for having lots of different sects. And there's, I think, 9 or something different kind of sects in Burma. And in Sri Lanka, there's about 4 different sects. In Thailand, there's only 2, Dhammayutta Nikaya and the Mahanikaya. And they will often have little differences, which shows you which sect you belong to. So, these are things that you've probably never seen, but these robes, they have a border on the bottom. You have to strengthen it on the bottom. So one sect will have the border on the inside, the other one will have it on the outside. And you would never notice unless you are a specialist in these kind of things. Only then can you notice these kind of things. So this is how kind of sometimes even among monastics you get these things of getting into requisites, into what it is that you have, and it's kind of really counterproductive and unfortunate, because this is precisely the idea of these robes, that they're supposed to be like a bed sheet. You just wrap yourself in a bed sheet and you call yourself a monk and you color it brown. That's kind of the idea. But then you kind of make that bed sheet really fancy here, and you kind of, but it's supposed to be really, really simple. So anyway, so that is the idea of robes. They have clothes for that matter, and it is something you can reflect on maybe also in your lay life. If you want to, it's entirely up to you. It's not a big deal. It's just a fairly relatively small issue, but you can see how these things can lead to defilements and identity and all of these kind of things. Even simple things like the clothes that you wear. It's kind of fascinating here. So this is the first one, using your requisites correctly. And then we have the second one, reflecting properly. They make use of alms food, not for fun, not for indulgence, not for adornment or decoration, but only to sustain the body, to avoid harm, and to support the spiritual practice. In this way, I shall put an end to old discomfort and not give rise to new discomfort, and I will live blamelessly and at ease. So the idea here, is that one of the strange things I should point out straight away is the idea of adornment and decoration. And it seems that should really belong to the previous one. It kind of makes better sense with robes than with food. That you use robes for adornment and decoration kind of makes sense. And there is some evidence, textual evidence, that originally they belonged to the robes rather than to the alms food. And here it is more for fun and indulgence. Yeah, that's usually what you use food for. Yeah, you can, if you kind of get into eating, you eat here and there and a little bit now, and you get bored, so you eat a bit extra and that kind of stuff. Yeah, for fun and indulgence. But the point, of course, in the meditation practice is to use food wisely. Yeah, to support the spiritual practice. Yeah, to avoid harm, just to sustain the body. That is the purpose. So this doesn't mean you cannot enjoy your food. You can enjoy the food, but it means you don't kind of go around eating when you get bored or that sort of stuff. Yeah, oh yeah, let's just eat a little because there's nothing else to do or whatever else it is, which is quite common. Yeah, people do this all the time. And so you hold back from that and you have more of a specific, be quite clear about why it is that you are eating here. And this idea of getting rid of old feelings means to get rid of hunger, yeah? So the body is kind of at ease. Not giving rise to new feelings means you don't overeat. Sometimes that can be hard, yeah? I know sometimes people are anxious when they come on, especially when they come on an 8-9 day retreat for the first time. Will I be hungry in the evening? I need to eat some extra just to make sure. And then you regret eating too much extra, yeah? Because it is just was a little bit too much. And I know people actually have this as quite a real anxiety, yeah, and it's fair enough because you're not used to it. And it's also the feeling of being out of control, yeah. You cannot just go to the fridge if you are hungry, yeah. You're not at home. I guess you can, but it's probably not a wise idea here because it's not really your food. So, but yeah, so it's that feeling of being out of control, which often people don't like. The sense of not having access to things when you are desperate, and that kind of makes the anxiety even greater sometimes. But after a while you get used to that, and after a while you kind of enjoy that renunciation, giving that up, because it means you don't really think about food afterwards. And again, that's how you know that you're on the right track, is if you don't think about it, yeah, in the afternoon or evening. You just forget about it, you have your meal and that's it, and then you're happy as a consequence. So the idea here is to use these requisites wisely. Don't eat too little. Don't become an ascetic. Do the middle way where you feel at ease all the way through. Yeah, where you don't worry about these things. That's kind of the idea. This is kind of fascinating about the suttas. Very often in Buddhism we look up to these very tough ascetic practices. People who are really kind of super tough. But there is very little evidence for that in the sutta, that this is what the Buddha recommended. Yeah? There are a few ascetic practices mentioned very occasionally, but they are actually quite marginal in the suttas. They're not really important. They become more important in later texts, like the commentaries and the Visuddhimagga and that kind of stuff, but not in the suttas. In the suttas it is about the middle way, yeah? Finding the middle way, eating just what is right, yeah? Not trying to be ascetic or anything like that. That's kind of fascinating. I noticed that with Ajahn Brahm as well. He never really encouraged fasting, for example, because he says to have the right kind of energy for meditation, fasting doesn't usually work. Yeah, it leads to the mind not having enough energy, or you don't have that right attitude, which actually seems to work for meditation. And there's very little in the suttas. The Buddha never really recommends fasting either. There's nothing in the suttas about fasting, except when the Buddha had wrong view. Yeah, before he became enlightened, that's when he fasted, not afterwards. So middle way, yeah, using these things wisely, especially on retreat like this. And then you will live blamelessly and at ease. Yeah, this is what it is about, to being at ease. The pasu viharo is the word here. And if you eat too little, you won't be at ease. And if you eat too much, you won't be at ease. This idea of living at ease, pasu viharo, is actually a word that is used in the suttas. Yeah, first of all, in these kind of contexts. But the higher kind of pasu vihara is when you enter samadhi and jhana states. Yeah, that's when you really pasu vihara, really living at ease. And so that gives you an idea of what this means. Yeah, it means that it certainly doesn't mean asceticism or having unnecessary pain or anything like that. It means ease in the ordinary sense, and in the higher sense after a while. This samadhi is like the ultimate ease. Yeah, you're really, really happy, really content, really super satisfied. Okay. That is reflecting properly, making use of your alms food or any food. Actually, we're all eating alms food here now on retreat. It's kind of cool. Yeah, people bring food to us every day, which is kind of marvelous. So you're all little monks and nuns, which is kind of cool. So next one, reflecting properly, they make use of lodgings, only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, to shelter from the harsh weather, and to enjoy retreat. Yeah, so the same kind of thing, the idea of finding the middle way, and not sleeping at the root of a tree or anything like that, but finding that kind of place where we are at ease and we can relax. And you can see here one of the requisites, one of the requirements for good lodging is to enjoy retreat. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So in other words, retreat, patisalana, basically means like solitude, being by yourself. And this is one of the reasons why when we built Jhana Grove, this center here, is precisely the idea of having privacy, where you have your own room and your own bathroom, because that allows you to feel more like a retreatant. You're not living on top of other people. The majority of retreat centers in the world, you kind of bunk up with other people, many people to the room, but that doesn't give you the same kind of ease, and the same sense of seclusion as you can have in a place like this. So this retreat center was built around these ideas that you find in the suttas to enable people to get closer to the kind of the ideal here of the monastic life, of being more secluded. We want the retreat center to be a halfway house between ordinary life and the monastic life. The enjoying of retreat is the purpose of these things, secluding yourself from society. Okay. The last one, it's kind of interesting how this idea of enjoying retreat and seclusion is something which comes up in the suttas again and again and again. Yeah, it's such an important part of the path of meditation, especially when the Buddha talks about meditation. You know straight away there are certain standard phrases that he uses. You go to an empty hut, you go to the foot of a tree, and then it comes up in little contexts like this, again and again and again, the idea of withdrawing from the sensory world, and how significant, how important that is on the Buddhist path. So, Anyway, coming to the last one, reflecting properly, they make use of medicines and supplies for the sick, only for the sake of warding off pains of illness and to promote good health. So medicines and supplies for the sick, the kind of sickness here is very broadly defined in the Vinaya. Sickness means any kind of discomfort, really, except for kind of pure craving. That might not really count, but any kind of discomfort, a little bit lack of energy, or you don't feel quite at ease, So this is kind of medicine is very broad. And so you have seen the kind of medicines we have here, a bit of chocolate. It kind of gives you a little bit of energy, a bit of cheese or whatever. These are the things that just to give you a little bit of a pickup in the evening. So, that's kind of the purpose. So medicine is not perhaps the ideal translation in this kind of context. That's not normally what we think about as medicine in English. It's more like what you might call a tonic or something like that. It kind of pick me up, a little something just to keep you going here. And that's how it was used at that time in ancient India as well. It was used as a kind of additional, small additional supply of food, not really considered full food or proper food. Cheese is kind of a bit borderline, but chocolate is kind of just more like a small addition. And so that is what what this is really about. So please use those things as well. Use them wisely. If you need to and you want to, that's why they're there. And just to kind of give you that extra energy or whatever. So there you are. And then again, for the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without using these things do not arise when they are used. In other words, used properly. These are called the defilements that should be given up by using. Yeah. So that gives you an idea, yeah, and you can extend that to anything that you own in this world, anything that you have. You can think about it in this way. Is it going to be helpful? Does it increase my defilements, or does it decrease my defilements? Yeah, and you can think about things in that way. So sometimes I have this computer that I use. It's not actually, it kind of belongs to the monastery really, but sometimes I have to think, does it increase my defilements or does it decrease my defilements, these computers? So it's very handy often, but it can also be a distraction. So I'm going to have a look at another little sutta, and this is from the Mahakandaka. Mahakandaka is a part of the Vinaya Pitaka. It has KD1, it says there. It's an abbreviation you haven't seen before. So this is a part of the Vinaya Pitaka, in other words, the rules and regulations for monastics. And this is things that I have translated myself, because this is what I have been sometimes do. And this is just about the ideal kind of monastery. Yeah, we have talking about the ideal requisites, and then kind of the ideal monastery is what this is about. So I thought that might be interesting just to have a look at in conjunction with this. So this is how it goes. Then King Bimbisara thought, where will the Buddha stay that's neither too far from the village nor too close, that has good access roads, that's easily accessible for people who seek him, that has few people during the day and is quiet at night, that's free from chatter and offers solitude, that's away from human habitation and suitable for seclusion. So this is the ideal place. Yeah, this is kind of what is expressed here. So King Bimbisara is one of the famous ancient kings of India. He was the king of the Magadha kingdom. Magadha was kind of just starting out at this time. It was kind of still very small and very insignificant, but he was kind of the ones who established Magadha, and the capital city was Rajagaha, and this actually happens in Rajagaha, this particular episode. And later on, the Magadha, of course, became the great empire of ancient India. Ashoka too, it was still called the Magadhan Empire when Ashoka became king. And that was the largest empire in Indian history under Ashoka. And he moved the capital from Rajagaha to Pataliputra. Yeah, and Pataliputra is present-day Patna. If you go to India, Patna is on the river Ganges. And you can go to this ancient capital, and there are excavations there, yeah, which show that this was a magnificent city 2,300 years ago or something like that. Still, some remnants from that time are still found. The King Bimbisara, he was one of the first kings of this particular kingdom, yeah, later on becoming an empire. And he was a very special king, and he was a follower of the Buddha very, very early on, one of the first followers of the Buddha according to the Vinaya Pitaka and some of the suttas. And he is said to have become a stream enterer, yeah, a king who became a stream enterer. And so he then becomes a stream enterer, becomes a very strong supporter of the Buddha, and here he actually gives a grove to the Buddha, so the Buddha can stay, has a place to stay when it comes to the Rajagaha, the Buddha and the Sangha, of course. And the story of Bimbisara is a bit tragic, because then later on you have his son, Ajatasattu, who then kills him. Yeah, this is kind of very common in kind of royal lineages. You get the son killing the father, and it's a very common thing apparently in human history. And this happened also in India. So he kills his father, who is a stream enterer. It's a very bad idea to do that. And then of course he had to reap the results of that very bad karma. And then it's interesting. Then it goes down it kind of goes down into the generations. The next generation, Udayabhadra was the son of Ajatasattu. He then kills Ajatasattu, yeah, and then apparently his son kills him again. It kind of carries on like that, yeah. It's kind of the karma, it's almost like karma moving on from one generation to the next one. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the King Bimbisara. He's a stream enterer, and because he's a stream enterer, he has an understanding of the Dhamma. He knows what is a suitable monastery. Yeah. So where will the Buddha stay that is neither too far from the village and too close? Yeah, this idea of this middle way. You want to be close to the village, yeah, or the city, because you want to have access to alms food. That's where you would go for alms, but not so close as it is a disturbance. Yeah, so maybe like a kilometer away or something like that might be suitable. It has good access roads. Yeah, people can come when they want to listen to the Dhamma. They can see the Buddha. It's not too difficult to arrive at the monastery. There's an interesting passage that you find in a lot of the suttas. When someone goes to see the Buddha, it is always they take the carriage as far as the road will allow a carriage to go. Then they get down and then they walk to meet the Buddha. Yeah. So you can see here that there are access roads that go to the monastery, but they don't go all the way. You have to kind of leave your carriage behind at a certain point, and that's where kind of the forest begins. And then you enter the forest, yeah, or the grove, and then you see the Buddha. This idea that civilization is kept at bay, yeah, it is kind of a certain distance away. So yeah, it's a bit like Bodhinyana Monastery. Yeah, you can drive to the main buildings, but you can't really drive to the kutas. Well, you can drive to the kutas, but you can in an emergency, but it's not roads are not available to the kutis. You have to walk the last few hundred meters to get to the kutis. Yeah, so it is accessible for people to seek the Buddha because they want to hear the Dhamma, they want to ask questions and that sort of thing. Nothing has changed, they want to ask questions, the same thing we're doing here. It's always been like that, and it probably always will be like that, because that's how you learn, I suppose. It has few people during the day and it's quiet at night, free from chatter and offers solitude. Yeah, the solitude again comes up again and again and again in the suttas. It is away from human habitation and suitable for seclusion, yeah, for retreat, for enjoying meditation. This is the ideal monastery. So, Bodhinyana Monastery, Dhammasara Monastery, getting quite close, yeah, to this ideal. I think it's pretty good. So I think we can sort of say that it's acceptable within these kind of standards. So then he thinks, and it occurred to him, my bamboo grove, Velu Vana in the Pali, my bamboo grove park has all these qualities. Let me give the park to the Sangha of monks headed by the Buddha. So, bamboo park, if you go to India in the present day, you go to Rajagaha and you will still find the excavations from the Velu Vana. Velu means bamboo in Pali, yeah, probably maybe in Sinhala as well, I'm not sure. Velu, something like that. Velu, anyway, that's what it means in Pali. Vana is like a grove or a forest or a thicket or something like that. So the Velu Vana, you go there, you can find it, and it's just outside the city. Yeah, the city was within this kind of mountain range or hill range, and just outside, just like you will see here. It fits the description very well with what you see here. So I will give this bamboo grove to the Sangha of monks headed by the Buddha. And this gives you an idea of the right way to make an offering. Yeah? An offering is not really to be given to individuals. And even the Buddha himself, in certain suttas, he says, don't give to me, give to the Sangha. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Even the Buddha would say that. So the idea is to give to the Sangha. And the reason is because when we give to individuals, of course, sometimes it is right to give to individuals, because sometimes there is like an individual requirement. But when we give like something that has a general usage, like a park like this, or a building or something like that, we should always give to the Sangha. And the reason is because someone who gives to the Sangha, they have an understanding of the big picture of what Buddhism is about. Yeah? Buddhism is not really about individuals. It is about the ability to this whole institution called Buddhism, with the monastic Sangha, both female and male, and the lay community, both female and male, yeah? The upasakas and upasikas. Sometimes you may have heard me use that word, and for those of you not familiar with these words, upasaka is a male lay disciple in Buddhism, upasika is a female lay disciple. And so this is what you give to. You give to this whole movement, yeah, because this whole movement with these institutions, it is that which creates happiness in the world and which helps people to get out of suffering. So you have this broad vision of what you're doing here. And when you give to this broad vision, because it is a much more broad thing, that is why the good karma from that, good karma is often called merit, sometimes called merit, punya, boon, and in Pali, and that is how you maximize the good karma, precisely because of your broader vision and your intention is much broader. So here, this is an example of that. I give this to the Sangha headed by the Buddha. You can't really give to the Sangha headed by the Buddha anymore, but you can still give to the Sangha. And the highest merit, according to the sutras, is to give to the Sangha, both female and male. Give to both Ubato Sangha, both Sanghas at the same time. Again, because it is a very broad vision, it's a broad idea of what Buddhism is about. So your intention kind of encompasses this broader vision of things. So, there are little hints here, in the sutras like this, of how to, or what we are doing, how we think about things. Then the king took hold of a golden ceremonial vessel, Binkara, I think the Pali is, and dedicated the park to the Buddha, saying, I give this park, the bamboo grove, to the Sangha of monks headed by the Buddha. So it's interesting, he has a golden ceremonial vessel, Binkara, and if you come to Bodhinyana monasteries, we also have golden ceremonial vessels. Have you seen those? You probably have, right? We have seen people, they have a little vessel and they pour the water out of the vessel into another vessel, and they are, I think they're made of brass, but they look a bit golden, They have kind of a slightly golden color. So you pour the water over, and that pouring of the water over symbolizes the transfer, the transfer, giving something away. And sometimes there's also an additional symbolism of the water overflowing. It's like you're kind of overflowing with a good karma or whatever, giving out. But it's a transfer that is symbolized. Again, we're doing that. It goes back to ancient India 2,500 years ago, probably even more ancient. Who knows when these things started? But it's kind of cool. It connects us with that ancient tradition. I don't know, I find that really kind of interesting, that we are connected to that in this way. It makes things more meaningful in a sense when you know this was even done at the Buddha's time, in the Buddha's presence. It makes things that, they're not just cultural accretions or additions that we have invented over the history. These are actually ancient traditions that were done and were meaningful 2,500 years ago. So the king does that. And then he says, I give this to the Sangha of monks headed by the Buddha. At this point, there were no nuns yet, so he couldn't give it to the Ubato Sangha, both Sanghas. It was still the early days. And then the Buddha accepted the park. So that was, and then how did the Buddha accept the park? He would give a verse of thanks or something like that. He would kind of say something about the occasion or whatever. I haven't included that. Maybe I should have, but it is not there. So there you are. That is the giving, the ideal monastery, and how that is given to the Sangha. So anyway. Sometimes I include a few random sutras. I hope you're okay with that. So let us look at one more sutta that has to do with this idea of using. One last one. So this is from the middle-length sayings of the Buddha, the Majjhima Nikaya, number 114, which is called the Sevitaba Asevitaba Sutta, which means to be used and not to be used. And the Buddha is speaking to Venerable Sariputta. And what he says, Sariputta, robes are of two kinds, I say, to be used and not to be used. So it was said by the Buddha, and with reference to what was this said. So this is probably the Venerable Sariputta expanding on the Buddha's initial statement. Venerable Sir, such robes as causes unwholesome qualities to increase and wholesome qualities to diminish in one who uses them should not be used. But such robes as causes unwholesome qualities to diminish and wholesome qualities to increase in one who uses them should be used. This is like what we were saying before about the using the robes in the right way. So this is how you know how to make decisions in life. Yeah, so and then it goes on. So it was with reference to this that it was said by the Blessed One, Sariputta, robes are of two kinds, I say, to be used and not to be used. And then the sutta carries on with a large number of things. Alms food is of two kinds, resting places is of two kinds, and it goes on with a large number of things, to be used and not to be used. And the answer is always the same. If it increases the good qualities in you, then it is to be used. If it decreases the bad qualities, it is to be used. But if it increases the bad qualities, you should stay away from it. If it decreases the good qualities, you should stay away from it. And it's such an incredibly simple and beautiful and marvelous way of thinking about life in general. Yeah, when we make decisions about things, it's a question that often comes up in life. People often ask us, how do I make a decision in life? How do I decide what I should do? How do I decide whether I should come here on retreat? How do I decide which job I should take? How do I decide which relationship is appropriate? How do I decide anything, basically, in this world? How do I make decisions? And this is one of those fundamental answers to that question, that conundrum, how to make decisions. We should reflect what is going to improve my opportunities to move forward on the spiritual path. That is the right way to make a decision about anything. Yeah, even in your work life, sometimes you may take on a new job because it is higher status or it is better paid or whatever. But be careful. That is only very short term. Yeah, I don't want to. It's not bad to have higher status, whatever it is. It's only a fairly small thing, except that it might kind of inflate your ego a bit and that kind of stuff. But the point is that it is so short term. When you die, when you come to the end of this life, often long before that, you have to give these things up anyway. Yeah, don't focus so much on that. What really matters are your spiritual qualities. Is this job going to afford you an opportunity to live well? Is it going to give you enough holidays? Yeah, enough weeks of holiday to be able to go on retreat or to be able to just relax or whatever? Is it going to be a high-stress job where the employer demands that you kind of spend many hours after work to kind of really work yourself, kind of exhaust yourself? Or what matters in life? What is really important? How much salary do you need anyway to kind of survive and to kind of live reasonably well there? So all of these things are the things that you need to ask yourself. Yeah, what is it that really matters in life? And these are the things that matter, that you are making spiritual progress. If you make spiritual progress, one day you're going to have to reach the goal of the path. If you keep on progressing, one day you have to get there. Yeah. As long as you don't start moving backwards, then you're going to get to something very, very profound. This is when you build up things that are truly meaningful. Yeah, all the other stuff is really empty when you think about it, because it's so short term. It doesn't really last. So let's build up the things that matter. This is how you make decisions about the things that really matter in life. Is it going to work? When you are a monk, who should my teacher be? Yeah, should I hang out with Ajahn Brahm? Should I stay at Bodhinyana Monastery? Should I choose another monastery? Which kuti should I stay in? Should I give a retreat at Jhana Grove or not? Yeah, should I say yes to another invitation to do something, or is it time to kind of just hang out with myself for a while? All of these things can come down to these kind of choices. Is it going to, this kind of decision making, is it going to be helpful or is it not? There's a marvelous way of reminding ourselves what really matters in the world and then making decisions on that basis. So that is one way of making decisions. But since we're talking about making decisions anyway, what are some other principles of decision making here? Because sometimes you may be uncertain. What actually is the best way? What is going to be, what is going to work to my advantage in the long run? And another principle of decision making is the idea of make decisions only when your mind is balanced. Don't make decisions if your mind is out of balance. If you have some defilements in the mind, if you have some strong desires, if you feel some restlessness, if your mind is really tired or whatever, that is the wrong time to make a decision. The right time is when you are at ease. When the mind is clear, you have a sense of clarity. Okay, now I feel really at ease. What is the right thing to do from this position now when I'm in the right frame of mind? That is when you make your decisions. But sometimes we make decisions at stupid times. We make decisions when we're angry. Yeah, that's a very common. Okay, I'm going to leave. Bye. I never want to see you again. Bang! You slam the door and off you go. Yeah, this is kind of why do we make decisions at that time? Well, the reason is because anger is this very compelling force, compulsive force that forces us to act. Yeah, and then we do silly things because we are compelled by the anger and ill will of our life. Don't make decisions when you are in the thrall to the defilements because they are going to make you do silly things that later on you're going to want to reverse again. So this is one of the other principles of decision making. Make decisions only when your mind is cool and at ease. And the last one, this is Ajahn Brahm's favorite decision method. Yeah, this is kind of maybe the best one of all. Take a coin, yeah, head or tails, flip the coin, tick. Okay, well, what is it? If it's head, I'm going to do this. If it's tails, I'm going to do that one. Tails, oh no, tails, oh, okay. So you go for heads, yeah? That's, that is the decision making. It kind of gives you an emotional reaction to what is, to things, yeah? And when you have that emotional reaction, you know actually what it really was that you wanted. Sometimes you don't know, you can't really figure it out because you're getting too intellectual about it. And because you're getting too intellectual, you need to kind of get back to your feelings and emotions. Oh no, okay, then you know, oh yes, good, okay, you're on the right track, yeah. So it's not, you're not actually doing heads or tails, you're just trying to get an emotional reaction so that you know deep down what you really want to do. Yeah. And this is one of those other things, can we trust our intuition or not? It's kind of interesting, how should we live our lives? Should we make decisions that are logical or should we make decisions that come from intuition? And the answer is both, yeah, both of those are useful ways of making decisions. So how do we know when we can trust our intuition? This is really important, right? Because intuition can sometimes lead us really astray. Other times it can be really powerful. You cannot maybe logically explain that something is right, and sometimes you shouldn't try to logically explain. Deep down, you know that something is right, and you just do it. So when can we trust our intuition? And the answer is, again, when your mind is clear. Yeah, when you have clarity, you have like a sense of peace and ease or whatever. Maybe some of the mind states that you have occasionally, sometimes on this retreat, you feel really great sense of clarity. That is when your intuition is going to be powerful. And you're going to know whether you can trust that intuition or not. The same thing with logic. When can you trust your logic? It's also only when your mind is clear. Because logic is always based on certain assumptions. And if those assumptions are kind of coming from some dodgy assumptions because you're derived from ill will or whatever, logic too is going to be flawed. So we need to kind of mix logic and intuition. And then when we use these things together, then we are kind of on the right track. But don't be afraid of trusting your intuition when the intuition is powerful and you know that something is right. You don't have to justify everything logically. I think that's one of the kind of diseases our modern world. Everything has to be justified logically. But sometimes if you know something deep down is true, you can trust that. And even if you cannot actually justify it properly to other people. Anyway, okay. So this is the idea of to be used and not to be used. Okay, let's have a quick look at the next one. So these are we have just seen the defilements to be given up by using. Now we come the defilements to be given up by enduring. And the Buddha says, what are the defilements that should be given up by enduring? Take a mendicant who, reflecting properly, patisankha yoniso, endures cold, heat, hunger, and thirst. They endure the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles. Or reptiles, creepy crawlies, creeping things. They endure rude and unwelcome speech. And they put up with physical pain, sharp, severe, acute, unpleasant, disagreeable, and life-threatening. And the idea here is that we try our very best to find a middle way, where we don't feel cold and heat, we don't feel hunger and thirst, and we try our best to find that middle way where the body is at ease. You have neither too much nor too little of things, but sometimes you just can't. Sometimes it's impossible because the world is such that we cannot control everything. And when you can't, well, then that's when you have to endure. You have to just put up with things, and you have to kind of have that sense of endurance. So this is an important part of the spiritual path, is to know when to endure and know when to try to get the conditions right. And a lot of the time, the answer is, well, you just put up with it. You don't try to control it. When we try to control, that's when you get upset. Yeah, you get upset, if other people go against your desires. Other people are too noisy, on the retreat, or that's when you should be enduring. You should be patient with it rather than trying to control, because you're never going to be able to control the people around you. It's impossible. So there's no point in getting upset. And it's much better to kind of remind yourself that it's just nature. These are good people who do things in the world that all people do. Okay, so let it be. You allow it to go. It's just nature. It's just the wind in the trees. It's fine. So this is how you make the distinction between what you can control and what you can't. If you can't, there's no point in getting irritated by what's going on around you. Just see it as nature doing its thing. And so this is how you endure the cold, heat, hunger and thirst, the mosquitoes and flies. Sometimes you cannot control the mosquitoes, and etc., etc. And of course, rude and unwelcome speech. We all have to endure that sometimes. The world is full of this. Most of the time people are very friendly and kind, but sometimes people are in a bad mood, and then they will utter speech that might be unwelcome. This is kind of almost a daily thing, for many people, having to hear this kind of stuff. And can you change it? No, you cannot change it. The world is like this. People say unwelcome stuff. Why? Because they have had a bad day, they have had a problem, they have had a bad background, and so they say things they don't really want to say. So you just shrug your shoulders and you think, this is the world. Okay, fine, it's just nature again. Don't worry about it. You endure it rather than trying to change it, rather than getting upset about it, rather than allowing the defilements to arise. You understand the world has to be this way. It cannot be any other way. When we get angry, it is because we think things should be another way. We think things might be different. Well, that is where we go wrong. They might not be different. There is no way of changing these kind of things. And of course, the last one is the physical pain. The physical pain and the fact that the body is always going to give us these kind of unpleasant things. And sometimes you can change your posture. Sometimes you can do something about it. But other times you can't. And for example, all the small little irritations in the body that you have to deal with, well, you have to deal with that. You cannot move every time you have the tiniest little pain. You're going to be moving all the time. So you endure that. And sometimes you have bigger pains. Pains that some people have chronic illnesses that make life really unpleasant and unbearable. And sometimes you have to learn to deal with those chronic pains in the body and to stay with it and to be patient even with that. And then that is kind of hard, but that is the way to go, because if you can deal with those things, then you can be at reasonable peace even when you have chronic pains. This is kind of the high ideal here. So this is all about understanding when you can change the things in the world, and understanding when you can't change, and understanding the difference between the two, and then enduring when you can't change things. There is far more things in the world that we cannot change. We tend to think that things can be changed, but actually, no, very often they can't. So very often it is better to just to go with the flow rather than trying to control things, especially when it involves other people. Other people basically cannot be changed. You have to learn to accept other people for the way they are, accept them as part of nature. And when you do that, you're going to find much more peace in your meditation and in your life in general. Then the Buddha says, for the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without enduring these things, do not arise when they are endured. These are called the defilements that should be given up by enduring. And then we have one of these beautiful little verses again. Again, we are from the Dhammapada, this beautiful little booklet full of inspiring verse. This is verse number 184, out of about 450 verse, something like that. And so this is how it goes. Patient endurance is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. He is not a true monk who harms another, nor a true renunciant who oppresses others. This kind of famous, very famous line from the Dhammapada: patient endurance is the highest austerity. And the idea here, remember that in tapo is the tapas, or tapo is the word for austerity. And in ancient India, this austerity was such a common practice. People would do all kind of crazy thing to practice austerity, to torment the body. And this, of course, was wrong kind of austerity from a Buddhist point of view. People, the Jains were very famous for their austerity practices, and they would stand on one leg on a super hot rock for days and weeks and years at a time. That's kind of crazy things from a Buddhist point of view. Anyway. And so they would do these kind of austerities, and people would eat almost nothing for years on end, and they would, do all this long list of austerities listed in the suttas of the kind of thing that people would do, because this was considered the main spiritual practice in ancient India. But the Buddha rejected that kind of austerity. So then the question is, well, what then is austerity in Buddhism? And this is the answer: patient endurance. And this is the idea that austerity really is a mental thing rather than a physical thing. It's the ability to be with things that are unpleasant. Things like unwelcome speech. When you can deal with that and be patient with that, that is the kind of austerity that the Buddha recommends. The patient endurance, or whatever is difficult in the world. So it is a mental austerity rather than a physical austerity. It's an ability to be with what is anything unpleasant in the world, not the physical but the mental, and then deal with that. That is the highest austerity. Patient endurance, hanging out, allowing the world to be the world without getting upset about it. That's kind of the ideal here. So Buddhism, one of the things about the suttas that you find very often with the Buddha is that he redefines existing ideas in Indian society and makes them into Buddhist ideas instead. And here he does the same thing with the idea of austerity. He changes the meaning of austerity as the idea of being patient, being with things, rather than being upset about things. So the patient endurance is the highest austerity. Nibbana, extinguishment is supreme, say the Buddhas. So Nibbana is supreme. We'll get to that later on, maybe. He is not a true monk who harms another, or a true monastic who harms another. In other words, this is one of those basic ideas of monasticism, is not to harm or oppress other people. If you want to know what the spiritual path is about, the Buddha says that there's 4 qualities that make for the spiritual path. One is non-harming. The other one is non-desire, anabhijja. Abhijja means like being covetous, means that you want what other people have. So it's non-desire, basically, not desiring things in the world. And the 2 other factors is sati, mindfulness, and the last one is samadhi, deep meditation. These are the 4 things that are mentioned as being kind of core aspects of the spiritual path. Non-harming is one of them. And if you harm others, then you are not a true ascetic here. It's one of the absolute foundations of what Buddhism is about. So anyway, just one little verse for you. And found in the Dhammapada. If you find these verses are really nice, if you enjoy them, and you find them inspiring, then you may want to have a look at the Dhammapada as a collection. And you can read a little verse every night before you go to bed and dream inspired dreams as a consequence. It's great to have inspired dreams. So anyway, so there you are. That is all for now. So please keep on enjoying yourself. Have a nice lunch, and we'll see you back again at 3 o'clock.